Welcome to the Food Professor Podcast, presented by Cattle, Season 5, Episode 4. I'm Michael LeBlanc.
And I'm the Food Professor, Sylvain Charlebois.
Our special guest this week was recorded live at the Seattle Food Innovation Show in Montreal, Maxime Beauchamp, Patisserie Michaud. It's the business founded by Ms. Colette Michaud, 1983 in Saint-Émile, Quebec. And their cakes are now distributed 1,000 points of sale, hotels, restaurants, major chains. Mario, her son, took it over with his wife. And listen, it's a great story. And oh my God, the cakes were so good. And it was just fun to hear about this. And they got like 60 employees now, and they're expanding. And it's just a great story of things, kind of like some of the things we often like to highlight in the food business that might not, you might not know the name, but you may have had their cake. But we want to make sure and shine some light on them.
Oh, absolutely. I think it's one of those behind-the-scenes sort of companies, and they produce a lot of cake. Those cakes are sold everywhere. Most of our listeners would have eaten them without knowing who actually made them. So we'll talk more with Max later during the show.
Yeah, like if we could find more guests like that at the next CL, because he brought over a sample of the cakes, and I almost forgot to do the interview. I was so enjoying their product. Anyway, like you said, we'll get to that a little later. Yep. All right, let's jump into the news. It's busy. I wanted to start, I guess we talked about this a little bit last week, and new news hot off the press today. More cuts announced to the temporary foreign workers student visa program in Canada. It seems like the Liberals are fast and furious, getting wiped out at the same time. So they're trying to make some announcements. Anyway, so I think the Liberals are really reacting finally, whether this is the right thing or wrong thing. I don't want to dwell. We talked about it already. I don't want to dwell on it, but it's clear this is happening. And, restaurants and other folks have said, listen, I don't know how we're going to run some parts of the business.
That's the problem, Michael.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not predictable. So regardless of the reason, I think we all know why the government is actually acting. And I think it's a good thing that they're doing something about this situation. But the problem is if you're running a business, you have no idea who you're going to be able to hire and for how long. That's the problem. So some clarity would be absolutely appreciated moving forward, I think.
Speaking of the future, let's talk about Quebec's new legislation or regulations, which is it around tip transparency.
Well, it's Bill 72. It's a bill.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a bill.
And so it is a bill proposed. It
actually
will have to be passed.
Last week I got a phone call from the Ministry of Justice of Quebec. I thought I actually had unpaid tickets or something. And so they actually called me and they asked me, we're presenting a bill 72, to bring more transparency to the market in both service and retail. And so we actually spent about 15 minutes talking about some of the changes for retail, and those changes are I think they're pretty good for consumers. So one, you'll know whether or not a product is taxed at retail before you even show up at the cashier. So there'll be a special sign for that. There's also going to be a special sign for members versus non-member prices. And because right now there's lots of loyalty programs and people are confused about what's the price for me. And they show up at the cashier. It's not the price they were expecting, and they're not going to back up because there's so many people waiting. So you kind of eliminate that awkwardness. Also, they're raising, that scanner code that was actually built and designed by the Retail Council of Canada. I think it was 25 years ago. Mm-hmm. If there was a pricing mistake on your product, you got it for free up to $10. Well, that bill is actually going to change that. They're going to actually bring it up. They're going to augment it to $15 instead of $10. And then, frankly, about 25-30% of products in a grocery store typically is over $10 now. So it was long overdue. Great changes. And in service, it's all about the tipping. The tipping problem, I think a lot of people have had issues with tipping. Mm-hmm. So they really want to make sure that terminals don't get you to tip on taxes, just on the amount. And the server has to bring you the invoice before they bring the terminal so you can actually have a chance to do the arithmetic to make sure that you know what you owe. And you want to look for any mistakes. So basically it just eliminates the awkwardness around, the server comes to you with the check and the terminal, and the person stands right there. And it happened to me on the weekend. Actually, we were brunching as a family, and I actually posted. I don't know if you saw my post on X.
I saw that. Yeah, I saw that.
And basically, I didn't have time to do the math because she was standing right there. And so I was doing my thing, 18%, and then I actually look at the receipt, and essentially the tip actually was applied to the tax, which means that my 18% became a 21%. And so that's it's only $2.35, but over time it adds up.
So you tipped 18%, so you weren't happy apparently. I'm kidding, right? Like 18% now is like I hate you. Like it goes to 25 or 30 or 40%. It's crazy.
I know, but on the machine there's a 15% with an emoji, a sad emoji. 15%.
Right.
Like,
right.
Jesus. I mean, you're supposed to be, a tip. 15% I thought was decent. Not bad.
Yeah, exactly.
Zero is bad.
I think it's going to be a very interesting year potentially for tipping in general, because if you're tracking, one of the proposals, I think, by Trump and the Republicans is that they would not tax tips, which, of course, would be very distorting, I think, for restaurants. Then they'd say, all right, I mean, if I was working for tips and I got no tax, I'd say, pay me $1, but let's upgrade tips to 25 or 30% and make it all tax free. So it'll be an interesting year for tips. Do you think this is going to catch on with other provinces, or you think this is a Quebec?
Well, I mean, honestly, on X, I just felt there was an anti-Quebec tone to some of the comments. Oh, it's in Quebec, they overregulate, blah blah blah. And I get it. I used to live in Quebec, and yes, Quebec overregulates, of course. But I think this bill makes sense because I feel tipping fatigue everywhere, and frankly. Some media call me for interviews about Bill 72, and what I said was simply this. The Quebec government is responding to this lack of leadership coming from industry. I mean, the industry never wanted to get in front of this debate about tipping. They never did. And we actually had Restaurants Canada on our show a couple of times. They never wanted to clarify the rules for operators, and that's why operators couldn't actually do that themselves. And so that we needed leadership, but since there is no leadership around tipping, well, governments are stepping in. So I am expecting other provinces to do the same thing eventually.
Interesting. Just a process thing. So it's a bill that still needs to be passed. So when would you estimate that takes effect?
Probably.
Next year?
Well, there's not going to be an election in Quebec until next year, so I think it should be good for spring. I think from a retail perspective, this is the other thing. I mean, from a retail perspective, again, I mean, some of the things that are being suggested by Bill 72 won't cost money to industry, this is why I think it's a good idea. None of these measures will cost money to grocers or restaurants. It's just about procedure. That's all it is. Yeah. And it's about clarity. And
I bet those signs are going to cost money, Sylvain. You're going to put signs on all products?
Why wouldn't Loblaw want to put in people's faces that 4,600 products are being taxed at retail? That money goes to Ottawa and provinces. Why wouldn't you advocate for a change? I do think we need to have a debate in Canada about the morality of taxing food at retail. I think some of it should be taxed, but not all of it.
Well, we've talked about our federal governments with lots of ideas for the grocers, but none of them themselves. And that's one of the things we've talked about over and over again, is come forward with what it seems to be an obvious idea to make food more affordable for Canadians.
Exactly. And shrinkflation, as you know, has made several products taxable now because they become they become snacks.
Yeah, we talked about ice cream, right? Wasn't it Häagen-Dazs ice cream? They dropped it down to $4.50
bars, you go from 6 to 5 in a box. That's taxable now, and people don't know it. They pay extra for that, and that's disgusting.
All right, well let's move on to the next thing. So you put an article out, and I've been hearing a lot about this as well and tracking this, that Canada is, I think, would you say, sobering up? We're seeing some pretty definitive trends, and I guess this is from your perspective, we get some great data sources because provinces like Quebec and Ontario they have great data that's public information. BC as well, Nova Scotia. So talk about what you're learning and what you think the trends are.
Well, this week, the SAQ in Quebec actually published its annual report showing an increase in revenues, of course, because they want to look good. They're providing a dividend to the government, but there's an underlying problem here. Sales by volume is down 2.5%, and it was down again last year, 2.8%. And so we start to look at other provinces. All provinces are down by volume. Sales by volume are down everywhere. The only province you can get data is PI. And Alberta is non-clear because there's no retail. I mean, retail-wise, there's no the government doesn't
no one
play a
point
role.
of data. Yeah,
exactly. So it's much tougher to. We actually estimated that the drop is actually quite significant in Alberta as well. But you kind of wonder, can liquor boards continue to raise prices in order to look good and maintain, the same level of dividend given to governments while people are starting to drink less? I mean, if you actually make, and many of these products are local products. Ontario has a great wine industry. Think of all the microbreweries across the country. All these companies rely on boards to move their products. But if you actually make all these products unaffordable, just because boards want to look good and give more money to governments, that is really a problem. And I think that's where we're at right now.
Let's spend a few minutes just unpeeling or unpacking this one a little bit, so to speak, or uncorking it, I guess I should say. Boom. Now there's more
on six packing it.
It's on six packing. Now there's more that's going on than price. I think there's probably 4 or 5 things that are contributing to both a long-term and a short-term trend. I can think of things like there's a trend amongst the youth to just drink less alcohol. That may be because they want to be healthy, or
in terms of trends. There's a long list. That's one of them for sure.
Well, and there's some debate whether they actually, kids being kids, want to drink less alcohol. They're just substituting with other things, whether that's cannabis or ready to drinks. It's been a long-term trend, but they're less expensive. You've got all kinds of things happening around new Canadians. I mean, if they're coming from parts of the world where they don't drink alcohol, clearly. The growth in the population is coming from places they don't always imbibe in alcohol. So you're seeing tremendous opportunities for other beverages, by the way. They're all over that. Anything else that you think is driving this program? I'm not sure I buy the price and spending thing, but it is one of those industries where there's a lot of substitution ability. You can trade down very quickly. If you bought a $30 bottle of wine, you can now buy a $20 bottle of wine. So there's price spending, and then there's volume. It does seem that people in general
that would impact revenues, not necessarily volume.
Right.
But volume is down, and so absolutely. I mean, you've worked with boards yourself. I mean, so you know the industry very well. I would say, costs, taxes on booze, health concerns. Youth considering other means to have fun, and cannabis is probably on the list, of course, because it's legal. And you have to talk about illicit cannabis as well. You know that. I mean, there's lots of illegal stuff going on out there that is not recorded. There's no data, and so there's a lot of that going on. But I'm concerned about the industry, but. I mean, most importantly, I would say moving forward, you got to wonder what's the plan for government. The SAQ yesterday said, sales by volume is down, so we may actually look at non-alcoholic beverages.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
What?
They're selling those in Ontario, non-alcoholic beverages at the.
You want to eat someone else's lunch now? Because the private sector will take care of that, and we have a private sector to take care of that. So the government wants to start stealing business from the private sector. Is that the deal? That's why I wrote that piece, Michael, because I think they're so hungry, they're so blind. They want to maintain revenues at a high level to look good and keep jobs. They're going to really just overlook their true mandate. And their true mandate right now is unclear.
Well, let's dig into Quebec for just a second, because they are the one province that there's a couple of provinces like that, Nova Scotia, for example, that own exclusive distribution for both cannabis and spirits and alcohol. And the Quebec government has been notoriously slow or reluctant to open a lot of cannabis stores. There's not many per capita. I think it's the lowest in the country. Do you see that as a route that they might get around that? Because in the same model, if they take those sales away from the black market, then it creates positive tax dollars. Do you see any movement on that?
I would argue that based on my experience this summer, I think cannabis consumption in Montreal is way up.
But they're buying it they're either buying it in Ontario or adjacent provinces, or they're buying it on the illegal market.
Of course. That's exactly.
But do you detect amongst it's not exactly a fair question, but do you detect any willingness to expand their retail presence in the province to kind of match opportunity and kind of counterbalance? No,
Not under the CAQ. Okay. Right now, I would say, and it is an unpopular position for cities, but most of the current government's political support comes from rural Quebec, and they would be supportive of that, of course. And so, but I do think, is there anything? Is there a problem? People drinking less? No, absolutely, it's great. If it makes us healthier, that's fine. But we have to deal and we have to manage that phenomena accordingly, instead of just letting boards being so thirsty, no pun, for more revenues. They're willing to sell anything to maintain that top line healthy, and I think that's wrong for liquor boards to do. If you're Loblaw, that's fine. It's a private business. But if you're a public liquor board, I think you got to be careful with what you decide to sell here. And in Ontario, what's going on with the expansion, I don't think that it's actually going to help the CLCBO at all. I just think it's going to make things more convenient and accessible, but it's not going to drive sales, I don't think, by volume.
All right. Well, let's take I'm not take a break, but let's.
I need a scotch now.
I need a stiff drink to keep the rest of the conversation going. Let's get to our wonderful interview, or my wonderful interview. I think you got pulled into some media thing, so you missed the cake. You're lost, man. It was great cake with Maxime from Patisserie Michaud. But first, let's hear from a few words from our great presenting sponsor, Cattle. Ever feel like the world of ratings and reviews needed a superhero? Well, enter Cattle, the caped crusader with Canada's largest, most diverse, and daily active consumer panels. That's right, Cattle is not your average podcast sponsor. So why choose Cattle? Because Cattle excels in consumer insights from your consumer, while also blazing trails in the realm of ratings and reviews, pioneering the future landscape of user-generated content. Beyond the valuable syndicated receipt data, they stand as unparalleled collector of reviews at scale, irrespective of category or price point. A testament to their impact, partnerships with giants like Walmart, Canadian Tire, and more. Visit AskCattle.com now for an exclusive The Food Professor podcast listener discount on your first review or research campaign today. That's AskCattle.com. Maxime, welcome to the Food Professor podcast. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me on.
It's Friday. Thank you so much for making time to sit down with us. Sylvain is so enthusiastic about your business. He says you've got to talk to these people. They make the best product. So once again, thanks for joining me. So who are you and what do you do for a living? Then we'll talk about the business.
Yeah, I'm Max Beauchesne. I'm a director of sales for Patisserie Michaud. So we're a bakery manufacturer, cake manufacturer, based in Quebec City. 40 years in operation. So we're celebrating our 40th anniversary this year.
Wow.
It's a family-owned business still. It all began as a small mom-and-pop shop bakery. Second generation took over 30 years ago and made the company really turned it into a manufacturer. So we do frozen cake. We have a few markets. We do a few distribution channel. So we sell to food service. We sell at retail under our own brand. We also do private label, co-packing for other brands. And we have this really, really nice division where we do fundraising campaigns. So we work with different various ONGs or any group that needs to raise money for a cause, and they sell our cakes, get profit off it.
That's neat.
Yeah.
How did you get? So I'm always interested when I talk to family business owners. You mentioned second generation. How do you go from the small, and it's really a good topic here at CL, right? I mean, how do you go from a small, innovative idea, family owned, to scale a business, right? And do you guys think a lot about growth even today?
We do. We're growing really fast at the moment. We're looking to expand in the U.S. We're expanding across Canada.
Now, when you say expand in the U.S., are you there today and want to grow, or you want to expand to the U.S.?
We are actually getting there as we speak. So we just signed a first contract. We got a first distribution there on the West Coast with Albertson, a large retailer out west.
Sure.
Really proud to announce it today. So it's going to be our first steps in the U.S. But we've been working on that project for many years. It kind of was slowed back a little bit. With the COVID.
They had to focus,
we had to refocus, and lots of challenges, but...
I'm curious about the process, so maybe you can share a bit. Like, was Albertsons, or we can say any grocer, I think I have a hole in my assortment, I think I have an opportunity that I perceive, and I'm going to go find which vendors like yourselves are in the market? Or did you kind of say, listen, we've got a great product that I think your consumers are going to love, or was it a little bit of both? How does that work?
A little bit of both, but it was an opportunity came up with one of our brokers that we work with in the U.S., and he approached us and he said, you know what, I think the timing is right, we have a good opportunity. So bring in your products. We're going to meet the buyer at Albertson, and they're looking for something that you guys that you can fill a hole for them.
Right.
And it worked. So sometimes it's just right timing, good timing, opportunity, and meet the right people at the right time.
Now the fact that you've been around for decades doesn't necessarily win you business. What is it that wins you the business? I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of competition. There's a lot of people probably make great products, but what is it that is your key to success? Well,
our key to success is to be authentic to our values, and one of those values is to make a great product. And our owner Mario always says he will not let a product out of the factory that he would not himself serve to the person he loves the most. So it's about the quality of the ingredients.
That's the touchstone. That's the benchmark.
That's the benchmark.
Nothing leaves here.
Nothing leaves here if I wouldn't serve that cake to the person I love the most. So so that sets the tone. And so we use real ingredients. So we have clean label. We use real cream, real butter, and we're still using those family. It's a family business, so we're using those family recipes that have been around for 40 years, and we scale those up to a manufacturer and industrial size, but it still remains. It tastes like a homemade cake and real ingredients.
That's got to be the real alchemy, right? It's one thing to make 200 cakes. It's another thing to make at your scale. How many different cakes do you offer? Like, how big is the assortment, and what kind of volume do you do? Because I'm just imagining, again, I'm so interested in how businesses scale, but yet at the same time keep the same quality and coherence in the product that, as you said, leaves the factory floor.
Yeah. Well, at the moment we have about 25 products in our assortment.
Okay.
We used to have over 60 a couple of years ago, and then we scaled down because we kind of went too wide, and it was very challenging production-wise to be able to keep up with the quality, keep up with the pace and the growth. So we scale down and we refocus on what we do really best. So and now we produce, depending on what format or what type of cake we make, it's gonna between 6,000 and 8,000 cakes every day that comes out of the plant.
Wow. And so what's new? What does innovation look like in your shop? We've talked about some process innovation, but when you've thinned out the line, but at the same time, I'm sure you've got your eye on what's next. Is it process innovation, and is it taste innovation? Tastes keep changing.
Definitely, it's innovations at every level in the business. It's in the process, so we're doing, of course, more and more automation, trying to keep as many jobs as we can, because we're really we want our people to get jobs, and it's part of our values, to be authentic and to have our people involved.
And now a lot of food processor manufacturers tell me it's very hard to find people. Like who is it? Michael Graydon told me there's 45,000 empty positions across Canada. Is it?
It is challenging, but I think it's getting a little bit easier recently. But it is still a challenge. Where we work, we have some foreign workers that come. So we have a whole Filipino delegation. Really great workers, and they've integrated really well into the company. They fit within our values. And
now, are they temporary foreign workers, or the folks in the Philippines come and stay?
They come and stay. They've been with us for many years now,
and I guess you find a few, and they tell their friends and family that this is a great place to work.
Exactly, and one thing that we find very interesting is to involve our workers at every level, and even into the innovation. So
talk more about that.
We just launched a new flavor. It's a UB cake. So UB is that purple sweet potato. You tasted it yesterday, did you?
I didn't taste it yesterday. I still have to make it to your booth because I've been staring at your cakes like longingly. So I got to make it to your booth. But I was in Trader Joe's in Dallas, and everything was ube, and I'm like, what is this? So it's just so funny that you mentioned it. That's the new thing.
Yeah, I don't know if
Filipinos would love that.
Filipinos love that, and they actually brought it to us. So we involve them in the innovation process. We have those innovation days where we ask all the employees, from the guys on the floor in the office, everyone comes in. We throw in ideas, and they came up with that idea. We made it taste amazing, and we decided to launch it. So that's a great story as well, to involve our employees and in every process of the innovation. So innovation in the process, innovation in the flavors as well, and innovation in the way we do business. Even in the office. So trying to use more AI, get up to date with our systems at every level. So.
How are you thinking about AI in your process? I mean, everybody wants to do something with AI. It could be, I guess, as simple as helping your social media team or creative. But,
exactly.
But how are you guys thinking about AI?
Some of it in marketing, some of it in finance, all the invoicing processes and everything. So it comes in at different levels. So it's part of the innovation as well.
Well, let's continue that theme a little bit. How do you think about technological innovation and automation on the plant floor? Because it feels like, we're kind of in a long run of people shortages, basically. This is not a short-term thing. Are you trying to find that sweet spot between the authenticity of the product, making sure you're hiring people in the community, but still, sometimes it gets harder than easier? Are you guys say, boy, if we had a robot that did X, that would be great. How do you guys think of that?
Well, the way we think about it is we want to bring in robots to be able to do more cakes in the same amount of time, and not necessarily replacing people. So we want our people to still be in and be assisted by those tools, those robots. But we want to keep the jobs, right? We don't want to replace people. We want to make their life easier. Some movements,
palletizing and palleting, repetition stuff.
Stuff. They're going to carry those big tray cakes, and it gets really heavy. And so with different tools and different automation, we can make their life easier and become more efficient, higher productivity. And with still keeping jobs for our people.
Fantastic. Let's talk about marketing for a bit. I haven't talked a lot about marketing in my interviews, but I'm really curious about, how do you think about marketing? You touched on it a little bit with AI, but, how important is, and how is it changing? Social media has got to be more important than it was before. So do you think about your brand as like, I need to have, let's say, business-to-business marketing, obviously for the trade. That's probably why you're here, right? I'll ask you that you're doing that today. But do you get in social media? You talk, like, how do you drive demand for your product?
Well, we do a little bit of social media. So we have our own brand that we push with social media. And one of our key marketing initiatives is the fundraising campaigns I was talking about. So we have more than 300 groups that are raising fund every year here in Quebec. So it goes from the class of that they're going to finance their field trip.
Soccer teams, sports teams, kids.
Whatever.
Sure. I used to do lots of that. We were always looking for a new idea too. That's
exactly.
Great, right?
So and we took that to a new level. So it's not the door to door trying to sell things anymore. We have an online platform. So people just sell our products online. We create a website for them where they can online. And
you basically would sell to them at a wholesale rate that they can sell to their parents at a retail rate, so the parents are paying what they'd pay in retail anyway.
Pretty much, pretty much the same, more or less. And
nice.
Yeah, and it's a great marketing tool because we get our product out there. A lot of people try it, and then they can find it at the grocery store and buy it again.
Now, your product is a very sensory-rich product. Do you do a lot of trial? Trial kind of went sideways, obviously, during COVID, and trial's not the cheapest thing to do, but I got to feel it's fairly important for you?
We do a lot of trial, a lot of in-house trial, so the team is really involved at all levels. We taste a lot of cake. It's hard to keep not eating too much.
I was going to say, that'd be a tough place for me to work and stay fit.
Oh yeah. It's a challenge, but it's we do a lot of tasting, and we use those events. At Cial here, we came here with 5 or 6 new flavors. We're actually tasting it and having buyers and just people walking in, tasting the product, and based on that feedback, and when you put the cake in the mouth of a customer and you see his reaction, it helps us to decide which one we're going to lunch.
Now, talk more about that. Like, what brings you to Cial and what purpose you use it for? Because you will be able to go out to your major retailers, but here you look for smaller retailers or global expansion and a little niche. A little bit of all that?
A little bit of all that. So we come here to see our retailers that we do business here, that we do business with.
Right. You want to be where your customers are.
Exactly. So it's a good place to reconnect. And, they're often the buyers are in a different mood when they walk a show like this than when you get a head-to-head meeting in their office.
Less spreadsheets.
Yeah, less spreadsheets. It's just more about, a little bit more casual, but it's good to reconnect with them.
Yep.
We meet new buyers, expansion. We met people from many countries and lots of opportunities, and we also meet with the end users because we sell to restaurants, we also to distributors and they sell to restaurants. But we met a lot of customers that come by and they say, hey, we buy your product from that distributor, we love it. So it's good to get their feedback as well and to see them. And
how's the show been for you? Like on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being not so great, 10 being just fantastic. We're coming back 100%.
It's a 10, definitely. Fantastic. Really busy. We saw everyone we wanted to see so far. Of course, today's a little bit slower. Always the case. Last day of a show, but it's been it's been great. Lots of people and great feedback on our products.
Now, is this a show you would go to in Montreal, or is this a show you go to wherever it is? Montreal, Toronto, Montreal. How do you think about that?
We used to come to Cial a lot before COVID. Now it's our first year back this year, and we'll definitely be in Toronto next year.
Oh, fantastic. It's one of the things Sylvain and I were talking about is the origin of the genesis of the show is a very Quebecois Montreal show, and but going to Toronto, it's a different market, right? It's just a different, not that far away, but it's still a little bit of a different market.
It is, definitely. And we're kind of getting back into the trade as well, putting our face back in the market. And so we took a break with COVID, and now we're back doing shows. We're going to be at IDDBA a couple of weeks from now in Houston. So a big show for our U.S. expansion.
Yeah.
Really looking forward to it.
And I know that, during the COVID and just slightly after the buyers were, and you recognize it because you kind of trimmed your line, they were looking less for new listings and more to just like get stabilized. But are their minds opening now to more new listings?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
We're back to kind of pre-COVID.
We're back to normal, if we can say that.
Well, listen, thanks so much for joining me. Now I got a question for you. With all these flavors, what's 25 different?
Yeah, around 25 flavors.
What's your favorite?
My personal favorite is the lemon raspberry. So we have a vanilla cake with we do a lemon mousseline, so it's half buttercream, half pastry cream, with a lemon flavored, natural flavor in it, and a raspberry jelly. So
matcha. You have a matcha.
We have a matcha. That's one of the new ones that we're sampling here and getting feedback on. It's
I gotta go try that. I mean, matcha, and you've got
matcha, the ube. We got our caramel cake is amazing as well. Chocolate brownie.
But push comes to shove, it's the raspberry for you.
For me, personal best is the raspberry.
All right. Well, listen, thanks so much for joining us here on the Food Professor Podcast. It was great to learn your business. Sylvain knew of your business and said, we've got to sit together and we've got to make sure lots of Canadians know about you. It's great business, family business, growing all the right way. So congratulations on your success so far and wishing you continued success.
Thank you for having me on. It's a pleasure being here with you.
All right, last couple of things just to talk about. The party is over. That's right. Tupperware declares bankruptcy. And, you store a lot of food at Tupperwares. I had 2 thoughts about this. One, my first thought was they're still around because you never see them. I think I would say this, and I'd love to get your insight, because I always think no matter what your business model is, and they had a kind of a direct on the doorstep business model, all business models decay. They all decay. Like department store model used to work. Now it doesn't. Less, decay, erode, or atrophy. And it just doesn't feel like, it feels like they watched the last 20 years go by. What are your thoughts about the demise of Tupperware?
I think it was predictable. I mean, the whole idea back in the day when they started to expand, and Mr. Tupper, the founder of Tupperware, was getting nowhere with his model. By the way, it was recouped by a lady. I can't remember her name, but she actually came up with the idea of having Tupperware parties, and it became a social thing. It became a popular social thing. And remember, back in the 60s and 70s. There was just not much to do. I mean, if you had a TV, you had like 3 channels. That's about it. And so the entertainment level is not there. And I think that was really Tupperware's strength. The quality, of course, is another one of Tupperware's strength, because the quality is actually pretty good. The lifetime guarantee and all that stuff. But when competition came into the market coming from Asia, it was very tough to compete. And so, because traditional social networks supported Tupperware's success, really. So who you knew, you were invited to parties, you bought things, it was fun, and you didn't care about the price. You just bought because you wanted to be with your neighbors, you wanted to be with your family,
social
whatever.
Event.
That slowly disappeared over time, because all of a sudden people went to stores, saw a product that looked a lot like Tupperware, but it wasn't Tupperware, half price. And so that social aspect of buying plastic and recipients kind of dwindled over time. That's my theory. What's yours?
Well, I think you're right. One is choice and substitution. This product does exactly the same, whether it's from Rubbermaid or whoever, as Rubbermaid, and I don't get why I'm paying a premium. 2, I think it's interesting. This what they would call MLM, multi-level marketing kind of promotions.
Yep.
There used to be a lot of them, and a lot of them, parties of all kinds of different things, and people just don't seem to enjoy doing it. Like everything else, there could be a renaissance for it. I mean, there is an epidemic of loneliness. It's a way to get people together.
But don't forget, I mean, it was also about women empowerment. A lot of women stayed home many years ago, as you remember. And, they were looking, as kids were getting older in the household, how do you actually generate income for the household without leaving it? Or when you're still responsible for children? Well, Tupperware just was a perfect fit for them.
Gap,
yeah. But now there are so many things you can do to make extra income online with the internet. The appeal is no longer there. Whether you're a man or a woman at home with your kids, that appeal is you got so many options to actually generate income.
Yeah. So the time has passed them by, basically, if I summarized as you think about what they could do. Well, we'll keep an eye on it.
The brand is still worth something, though. I mean, last year's sales were about $235 million. That's not bad. I mean, I think it's still worth something.
Yeah.
So,
well, the trend seems to be some private equity guys are always snapping different things up, buying and kind of turning around, introducing a new business model. Because you're right, the brand has some resonance, at least with people our age. I don't know if it has with our kids. They'd be like, what is that? So I think you got to be a little careful about those things. Like, maybe it does with you and me, but I don't know if our kids even know it exists, or they don't even know that it exists as a product. They think it's like Kleenex. It's just called Kleenex. It's a Rubbermaid container. I don't know. Anyway.
For some reason,
I said Rubbermaid. See what I just did there? I said Rubbermaid. I didn't say Tupperware. So there's a little brand confusion.
Competition.
Problem. I wanted to close on, we mentioned this off the top, CPI numbers came out, and you put out an interesting chart of something I've been thinking a lot about. Some people have said to me this dynamic around interest rates and CPI and rents that people pay. Say more about your chart and your thoughts of it and the numbers that just came out.
Well, while food inflation is dropping, has stabilized around 2.5%, rents are still going up like 8.4% year to year. And so if you're paying rent, if last year your rent was $2,000, you still live there, that's an extra $2,100 more you have to pay to keep that same roof over your head. For food, if you're a family of 4, you have to pay an extra $980 to pay for the same food you paid for last year for the entire year. So that's almost, that is basically $3,000 more a year to keep the same quality of life. So that's pressure. That's real pressure on a lot of people. And that's why people are upset and angry. But I think the pressure point, and I'm happy that people are finally talking about the real problem, interest rates and real estate and all that stuff, because I think that's the real problem. Here's the thing, though, and this is my column in this week's La Presse. I think Canada is in the middle of a food insecurity crisis. Because you see, back in 2015, our food insecurity rate was similar to the U.S. It was about 12.5, 12.7%. Very similar to the U.S.
And that just for my knowledge and for the listeners, that would be people who are saying that I do not or I cannot count on having food today or in a specific period. Is that kind of how that's measured?
Either moderate or severe food insecurity, okay, depending. Because you have to look at wages, you have to look at revenues for a household and food prices, both. Okay,
probably also percentage of your overall income spending on food is. Of course, that's
exactly.
too.
So if you look at the USDA research department's number, it was at 12.7%. Today, in the U.S., they're still at 12.8%, 12.9%. We are now at 22.9%.
Wow. 22% of Canadians say they're food insecure.
In 2015, there were about 4.9 million Canadians that were food insecure. Now we're almost at 10 million.
Crazy.
It's crazy. So last week we talked about Feed Ontario's report, 1 million Ontarians. That's your answer. That is why. And really, I mean, fundamentally, because of the fact that household debt is such a problem in Canada, the Bank of Canada's pathway to lower rates or lower inflation, if you will, is much more delicate than for the Fed. I mean, we're actually going to be hearing from the Fed this week that they will actually be dropping rates. But the Fed has more.
They just I just looked at the announcement. They dropped them a full half point.
Full half point. So their margin of error is actually much larger in the United States, and that's why households in the U.S. are more able to absorb a 5% hike than in Canada. So a 5% hike would likely feel like a 15% hike in the U.S. to make things equal. And that's why we're suffering so much. And that's why the GDP per capita right now, Canada, is in decline. So our economy is actually shrinking per habitants. And so we're not in a good place right now. And that's why my piece this week is called Canada's food insecurity crisis. I think we are in a crisis.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think over the course of the pod, both we've come up with some solutions, potentially. Like we do like to come up with solutions, like the no tax on the small items, taxes on food, and get rid of the interprovincial barriers. My God, we've been talking about this for 30 years. 30 years we've been talking about this. Yeah. And what has happened? Nothing. So, I don't know. Anyway.
The interest rates will likely drop next month. That's going to help a lot. But my guess is that, I mean, the private sector can do so much. You really have to make sure that you implement policies that don't cost industry more money. Right now, that's all we're thinking about. We're thinking about the environment, which is great. It's important. But at the same time, you need to think about competitiveness. And we're actually making our food industry less competitive.
Well, there's an election probably next year. So I guess one perspective would be it's an
next
opportunity.
Month, who knows?
Or next month, who knows? Yeah, life in a minority government now with the confidence and supply agreement ended. But for sure, there'll be one next year. I don't know. If I was an opposition party looking at the results from this week, I'd be pushing real quick to get an election, because the worst thing that could happen to the NDP or the Conservatives is for Trudeau to leave, right? They got to get that election done before he goes, if and when he's going to go. Anyway.
Yeah, so anyways, I don't think there's going to be an election next month. In fact, actually, I'm a bit concerned for the Conservatives, because if they fail to win a confidence vote, it will be seen as a political failure, seeing a party not being able to unify Parliament against the government. And so within a year from now, Trudeau will actually increase its support and he will win a re-election. Here you go. You heard it first on the Food Professor podcast. Trudeau will be re-elected.
You are living in some kind of fantasy world like from 30 years ago.
Cannabis is legal.
Nobody pays attention to what happens in Parliament. If it doesn't happen on social media, it doesn't happen. Anyway, listen, this is a pile of fun. We're not a political podcast.
Yeah,
but
we're not a political podcast.
But these decisions have dramatic influence on the things we talk about. So that's why we kind of bring it up, right?
Yep.
There's a direct line connection. So anyway, plus it's all fun. But let me tell you, your fellow Quebecers not too happy with the Liberals. And then now we got the Bloc to deal with.
The federal Liberals. And by the way, the 8,000 people in LaSalle that voted for the Bloc, I would argue that none of them are separatists. Just so you know, it's in LaSalle.
You think they voted for the candidate?
They don't like the Conservatives. So who are they going to vote for?
Right. Okay.
That's what happened. And it's really, what happened in LaSalle, Verdun is really dramatic. I mean, that's a huge loss. I think it's worse than St. Paul's in Toronto. I think. Because voting, you got Federalists to vote for a separatist party.
That's crazy.
That's pretty profound.
That was Paul Martin's writing, right? So,
it was. Yeah.
All right. Well, listen, we talk about a wide range of topics on this episode. That's what you could enjoy for the Food Professor podcast. Until next week, we got more great guests coming.
A cat-free episode.
A cat-free episode. Oh, my goodness. All right. Well, listen, let's leave it there. I'm Michael LeBlanc, media entrepreneur, advisor, keynote speaker, and a bunch of other stuff. And you are?
I'm the Food Professor, Sylvain Charlebois.
All right. Safe travels, everybody.
Take care.
In Springfield, they're eating the dogs. They're eating the cats. They're eating the pets of the people that live there. They're eating the dogs. They're eating the cats. They're eating the pets of the people that live there.
People of Springfield, please don't eat my cats. Why would you do that? Eat something else. People of Springfield, please don't eat my dog. Here's a catalog of other things to eat.
They're eating the dogs.
Whoa, 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 whoa.
They're eating the cats.
Meow, 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 meow.
They're eating the pets of the people that live there. They're eating the dogs.
Whoa, 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 whoa.
They're eating the cats.
Meow, 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 meow.
They're eating the pets of the people that live